Hello, and welcome to the Wednesday edition of Proud Malcontent. My name is Pete Bell, and I am a Proud Malcontent. Wednesday, the 26th of November. How did what happened? What happened to the year? I have no idea. Right, straight into it. I've a a lot of stuff today. Probably far too much. Probably won't get to all of it, but I'll dig in a wee bit and I'll try to keep some of it brief because today we have something a wee bit special. We have a live interview, a live chat. I'd rather call it just a chat with Stuart Dempster, who is an athletics coach in Australia, but from Scotland. More about Stuart later. First of all, I'll have my wee rant and try and keep it quick. The first thing, stupidity. Stupidity. Now, I'm not going to try and address every bit of stupidity there is going on out there. It would just take far too long. But this caught my eye. This one here. Plan for weekly disruption at Glasgow Primary School over English classes. This is people protesting outside a primary school because the school is being used to provide language lessons for immigrants, mothers. And it's just so stupid because there's nothing new about this. It's been going on for 10 years. Now, and while the more stupidity, there's more stupidity about it. These women, the women that are doing the protesting, they don't have children at that school. The women who they're protesting about do have children at that school. All of them, as far as I can make out, they're all mothers of children at that school. So these mothers stand outside the school with their daft signs are actually asking for checks to be made on mothers going into the school where their children are. It is madness. Now, does that apply to them as well? If they have children at school, do they have to get checks before they can go into the school grounds? It just doesn't make sense. It is so stupid. It's so stupid. You have to imagine, because I don't doubt for 1 minute that all or most of these people, there's one in that picture I have my doubts about, but I would think that most of these people are quite well intentioned. They just haven't thought very much about it. There's a couple of troublemakers have pressed their buttons and then pulled their strings, and they've just reacted. Oh, it's about children. Oh, it's about children. Oh, we've got to protect the children. Yeah, sure. Who would disagree with that? But that's how they draw you in. That's how they get you supporting their racist agenda. It's stupid. These women stand outside that school are behaving stupidly, even if they've got good intentions. Which there's one of them there giving the evil eye. I don't think her intentions may be all that good. Anyway, before I get into a lawsuit for defamation, I'll move on to this one. It's I, sorry, a column by Jonathan Shafi, who I know slightly reasonably well, and we met quite often during the course of the 2014 campaign. I know him to be a really pleasant and very smart guy. He knows his subject. Very left wing. The only real disagreement we have, he's very much an advocate for independence. But the only real disagreement we have is that he sees everything in terms of a class war, whereas I see things more in terms of power struggles and power games. But it's not a huge disagreement. However, the stupidity in this it came not in the article itself. The article is great. The stupidity came in the comments, where there's two forms of stupidity. One is that because Jonathan mentions a poll finding, which suggests, which is all polls ever do, which suggests that that we may be wrong to take it as a safe assumption that we have young people supporting Scotland's cause. It shows that that particular poll, this particular part of the poll, shows support among young people only negligibly higher than support among older people. But Jonathan was only using that as a hook on which to hang his comments, his column, which was about much more than that. It was about the need to engage and the lack of engagement and the lack of reason for young people to feel engaged. It was about a lot more than just the polls, but you would never know that if you read some of the comments. They were commenting as if the whole thing was one of James Kelly's columns, which is all poll analysis. That the poll analysis this was just a casual throwaway, as I say, just a hook to hang the article on. That's the first bit of stupidity. People who imagined it's all about the polls and all they could talk about was the polls, none of the rest of the stuff. And then there's people who, because Jonathan is criticising the lack of movement, the lack of action in Scotland's cause towards independence, obviously he's criticising the SNP. He does so fairly gently from my perspective, but he does criticise them. And you get the usual reaction to that from the dumb SNP loyalists and apologists who cannot take any criticism of their party at all, even constructive criticism. And Jonathan's was definitely intended to be constructive criticism. So there are these two different kinds of stupidity there. No doubt we'll come on to other stupidity later. But for the moment, I wanted to look at this article. This is a letter from Stan Gradinsky, who we all know very well. And from his letters in the National, and he writes very well, but he's very much a supporter of the SNP, and he's very much an opponent of anybody who tries to criticise the SNP. And this was another one of those letters, and I think actually I did respond to it, and I think what I'll do is I'll maybe just read out that response, which I actually only I post full on Facebook because there's a character limit in the National letters pages now for comments, and you just run out of space. You can't make a complete comment there. It's really annoying, very, very annoying. I know. I like to answer in detail. I like to answer thoroughly, and you just can't do that with that character limit. So it was on Facebook that I put my full response. I only got part of it on the National site. There are, brackets at least, a couple of problems with Stan Gradinsky's latest round of special pleading on behalf of the SNP. The two problems I identify are particularly worth addressing because they are, in my experience, common to all SNP loyalists and apologists. The first point to be made is that Stan starts from a false premise. He evidently regards the SNP as unquestionably a pro-independence party, which is going into the 2026 Scottish general election with the restoration of Scotland's independence firmly fixed at the top of its agenda. This is simply not the case. As anybody who has read John Swinney's own account of his strategy will be aware, it is not a strategy with independence as its endpoint, nor is it a strategy that aims to secure for the people of Scotland the means and opportunity to exercise our right of self-determination. It's a strategy which, even if entirely successful in its own terms, would achieve neither of these objectives. Swinney's strategy is not fit for the purposes of Scotland's cause. It is not designed for the purposes of Scotland's cause. Scotland's cause was not a consideration when this plan was formulated, other than with regards to the ways in which that cause might be bent to the real purpose of the strategy, which is to maximise the SNP vote so as to keep the SNP in power and John Swinney in his job. Stan Grodzinski obviously considers a vote for the SNP as a vote for independence, and therefore he gets annoyed with anybody who criticises the SNP because he sees this as deterring people from voting for the SNP and hence for independence. But a vote for the SNP is not a vote for independence. It cannot be, because independence is no part of the strategy. The second point is that, as is customary among SNP loyalists, Stan complains about the form and style of the criticism, but never addresses the content. He insists that we all find ways of saying something positive about the SNP's abysmal failure to progress Scotland's cause over 11 years, during which, by the party's own account, conditions for progressing Scotland's cause have been all but ideal. He doesn't seem to realise, or refuses to accept, that there is nothing positive to be said about this failure. To attempt to disguise the depth of this failure with soft words would be dishonest. The failure is total. There is no positive aspect to it. No positive consequences flow from it, either purposefully or coincidentally. It is unalloyed failure. Similarly, Stan wants us all to put a positive spin on Swinney's strategy for next year's election. But this strategy has no positive aspects either. It is stupid and reckless and downright treacherous. I'm a dab hand with the thesaurus, but I can't find any way to put a positive varnish on Swinney's declared intention to deny the sovereignty of Scotland's people and accede to the alien doctrine of parliamentary sovereignty. Perhaps, instead of just bemoaning the fact that people are criticising the SNP, Stan could lead by example. Let him list all the positive things he can think of about the 11 lost years and all the opportunities that were squandered during that period. Let him show us how he would go about presenting Swinney's strategy in a positive light. Let's see how he rationalises absolute failure and justifies wanton treachery. And that is not an attack on Stan. I've met Stan. He's a good guy. He is definitely one of the good guys. But he is committing a fallacy here if he thinks that the SNP is the vehicle for independence. It ceased being that vehicle sometime around 2015, 2016, probably in 2015. And it's gone further and further away from being that vehicle ever since. So it's not just Stan that I'm addressing with these remarks. It's all the SNP loyalists, all the SNP apologists, all the people who simply assume that the SNP is the independence party and never bother to look at the detail. They never bother to look at the small print. They never bother to read what John Swinney is actually proposing. And when anybody criticises the SNP for the 11 years of failure, they start talking about baby boxes and child payments and things like that. Well, fine. All these things are great. But on the constitutional issue, the SNP has done nothing. In fact, we've gone backwards. But enough about that. It's quarter past. We're already 15 minutes in, and I need to introduce our guest. And I don't know whether to bring him on now before, as I'm reading this introduction, or spare his blushes and leave him off screen until I actually have finished talking about him behind his back, as it were. Stuart Dempster is an athlete, as some of you might know him. Shamefully, I was not familiar with his name, but he's a former Scottish champion 400-metre hurdles. Sorry, he's a Scottish 400-metre champion, former. He has coached several sprint international athletes and record holders, as well as working with the Scottish Rugby Union, Andy Murray, and international hockey players. He moved overseas because he didn't get a national event coaching position here in Scotland, which seems a bit of a tragedy. He was a national athletics coach for the Seychelles, which is a rather interesting way to go about working abroad. Seychelles can't be that bad. A wee bit better than Scotland in November, I suppose. And he kind of specialises in youth development. That's enough of that. We'll find out a bit more when we meet him. Ladies and gentlemen, Stuart Dempster. Hello, Stuart.
Hello, everyone. How are you doing?
Right. I think we covered quite a lot in that. It's quite a CV, quite impressive.
Thank you.
And whereabouts in Australia are you, Stuart?
I'm in a place called Lake Macquarie, which is it's technically a city just south of Newcastle in New South Wales, which is we're about an hour and 20 minutes drive north of Sydney, basically.
Right. Okay. I think most of us can sort of imagine that on a map. A point of no interest at all. My father was actually born in Australia.
Oh, is that right?
In a place called Condoblin.
Condoblin, yes, I've heard of it. That's further. That's inland, I think, somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's in the nowhere.
I think so.
I don't actually know that much about it. Only that he was born in Australia, but he left there when he was still a child. So
yes,
no ties. That's as close as I can get to a tie.
Yeah.
Yes. I was quite interested in how you mentioned that you've become you've always been an advocate for independence, and you were never fully convinced that the devolved parliament. What were your doubts about the devolved parliament, Stuart?
Well, of course, the parliament. I left Scotland in basically 2001. So, but I've always believed that every country should be independent. And I just was happy to get, the Parliament, and it had an initial, to me, it had an initial feel good factor that we've got, etc. But all the restrictions, I thought it's bound to run out, this feel good factor that we've got a Parliament, and we're going to hit a point where, because of our situation being vastly different to England's, then we're bound to run against problems of, well, we haven't got enough power to run our affairs the way we should. So yeah, I mean, it's a county council, I suppose, effectively, branch of the Westminster government, which is not to my liking, and obviously a lot of other people as well. A growing number seem to think on the same kind of lines as me. So yeah, that's my
there's a growing opposition to the Scottish Parliament, which I find a bit unfortunate, because the point of view that I take is that it is our Parliament that was stolen from us, then returned to us in 1999 in chains, the chains of devolution, and we should take it back. But I hear what you're saying about it being a trap. Another aspect of my my perspective that you might want to comment on is that I think they, like you, that the Scottish Parliament was fine to start with, but it's outlived its usefulness. In fact, it outlived its usefulness some time ago, some years ago, and it should have been brought to an end much sooner than now. It's been allowed to go on too long.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because since I've been overseas, I've never had not an awful lot. I've not had an awful lot of news from Scotland about how the Parliament was going, and it was only, I guess it was about 5 or 6 years ago, I read somewhere that the SNP was in with a massive majority. That must have been Alex Salmond's government. He got a huge majority, and I also knew that was a very difficult thing to achieve by the way the voting was set up. And so, I thought, well, that's great now. Surely now we're going to get independence, because that's the Independence Party. So I'm in this sort of cloud cuckoo land here of, I'm not talking to anybody about it. I'm getting news, Australian news, and I was getting African news before that and stuff. So, and I worked in New Zealand as well. So I wasn't getting an awful lot of information from Scotland, but I was getting bits. I'm thinking, well, isn't there now a move to start talking about independence and start telling the Westminster government that we start to negotiate? But there's been nothing. And then, of course, like COVID came along, and there was more information about Scotland on COVID because of the announcements that the First Minister was making all the time, and there seemed to be a feeling amongst the news here that Scotland was actually doing certain things quite well. That was their interpretation of it. So, but you will know more about that than me. But and still after that, there's still no independence, and I'm thinking, so what's going on? And I also didn't know an awful lot about the 2014 referendum, but I was actually invited on the radio here, the ABC, to discuss the pro side, and there was another Scot they found who was for the no side, and we had a friendly discussion on the radio. So a lot of Australians got some perspective on what we were doing in 2014, but I didn't know about all the ins and outs.
Sorry, it's interesting what you say about you're not getting Scottish news, because we don't get Scottish news either. We get the BBC, and we get the British press, all owned by. We have the National, which is it is a pro-independence paper, and there's a lot of people are against it because it's owned by News Quest and all the rest of it. But it's editorially a pro-independence paper. But it's interesting that you said there was some interest there in the referendum in 2014.
Yes.
Did you find that outside the radio and TV studios? Did you find that in the streets and in the pubs and cafes? Was there much interest?
No, not in the streets. Not in the streets and the pubs. Not that I'm in pubs that often these days, but go to cafes. But no, it was on. I listened to the ABC radio and the TV. Watch TV. ABC is a good organisation. It's got a verification department. So everything has to go through the verification department prior to going out on air. So I've got a fair degree of confidence that their objective, their objectivity is pretty good. So yeah, I was just picking things up on that, and I've been on the radio a couple of times, just maybe mentioning things about maybe have a discussion, and I just join in the phone in and maybe explain that the Scottish perspective as far as I see it. And I was on recently, since I've discovered Salvo, back in June I discovered Salvo. And then once I got onto YouTube and went through all there's the Scotland channel, there's what you're doing, there are other podcasts, and my jaw was hitting the ground. I'm amazed with what Salvo have dug up. Professor Robert Black, Alf Baird. I've just got his book actually, and Sarah Salyers. I mean, really, I think, I'm not a political analysis, I'm not, but I do think that with all the information that's coming out now, they have the British government over a barrel on this. And which government minister is going to go to a TV studio and discuss with Robert Black, constitutional matters? He'll just take them to the cleaners. So, it's really well put. They've done a hell of a job. They've been doing this for 5 or 6 years, I believe. And I just think it's just a big game changer. It's real gold. And I was so happy to discover this was going on. But I'm also noting, well, this is not a political party. These are people who, from different walks of life, who have given up their time to do this. And my question was, well, why are we paying all the politicians their big salaries and expenses? What are they doing? What are they doing for the Scottish people?
It's interesting. A couple of things are interesting about what you just said there, Stuart. One is that you started getting your information through the new media, through the blogs and YouTube channels, etc. The new media, not the old media, which you weren't getting much any information from them at all. No. And the second thing is what you've discovered is what I've termed the new thinking in the independence movement. Alf Baird called it the intellectual wing of the independence movement. And how we have moved on, not just the Salvo and liberation, but in other ways as well. My own thinking on the constitutional issue has changed considerably because of this new thinking. So there's two interesting points come out of that. Do you feel that the new media, that Scotland could make better use of the new media to reach out to the diaspora?
Yes. I mean, the BBC sadly has I do believe that they are very.
I'm sorry, Stuart. I'm sorry, Stuart. We don't do censorship, but you're not allowed to mention the BBC. People's heads explode here when you mention the BBC.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
All right. Okay. So most it's the new media. I found it refreshing, and it's good to see Scottish news from a Scottish perspective. From people who are living in Scotland, and they're not tied to a particular channel or a particular billionaire who owns the channel, etc. So I find it. I look forward every weekend to the Scotland news from the Scotland channel, News for Scotland. I look forward to that. And look forward to the likes of your show and IndyCar and stuff. It's good. I won't necessarily agree with everything on all of these, but it's good to have the input and the stimulation from it, from a Scottish perspective. I just find that our situation, as has put so eloquently, you can see we are a colony, and we need to get how the big challenge is, how do we get the word out to all the people who are not so political as maybe ourselves are? How do we get the word out to them and about all this constitutional stuff, which is highly identical, and there's a lot of history involved, etc. How do we get that out to them in a simple to understand way? And I think I've been watching the Scottish Currency Group, actually, that they're amazing too. And I think that people have to understand that when we get independence, they're going to benefit. It's going to be hard not to benefit from gaining independence. And when you see the experts on that group, for example, talking, I think it's a chap called Murphy and Dr. Tim Rideout, Professor Murphy. So when you hear them talking, they're obviously experts. They obviously know what they're talking about, and they're confident that what they are going to do is going to be done, and it's the right thing to do by Scotland. Like, for example, get a currency from the get, not be having sterling for 2 or 3 years transition and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So
there is a problem, however, with all this, Stuart, and that is that this corpus of new thinking, this corpus of knowledge, and developing ideas, developing plans and strategies, none of that touches the political sphere. None of it exists in this political sphere. The politicians exist in a bubble, isolated from all of this. I would guarantee you that none of them have ever watched a podcast like this, or IndyCar, or Gordon's, or any of them. They don't watch them. They're not in touch. They honestly don't know what's going on. So I'm saying this because what you may be seeing, and may be deceptive if you think that that's actually affecting anything. The real frustration comes from the fact that it isn't affecting anything. We are moving on. We have moved on, and the politicians just haven't.
Yes, you can see that. It is time.
Even from where you are, you can see that.
Yes, well, this is the third former British colony I've lived in. Before I came here, it was New Zealand, and then before that, it was Seychelles. When I lived in Seychelles, I went out from Scotland. It was December in Scotland, and then I landed in Seychelles, and it was. But they put me in a hotel 4 or 5 days because there was actually an election on at the time. So I started talking to people, just people who work at the hotel, the guy behind the bar, in the cafe, and whatever. talking to these guys, and I started going, Seychelles a very small population, isn't it? And they look at you as if they go, what are you asking us that for? And, because my thinking was that one of the biggest things when I was in Scotland was we're too small to run ourselves. We're too small. The population of Seychelles at that time when I was there was 88,000 people. 88,000.
That's smaller that's smaller even than Iceland.
Yes, it's a tiny population. So the population thing, according to Westminster, is a big thing. Or you can't all. But these people just don't see it as a problem. They just say, "We'll get on with. We're miles better off doing our own thing." And none of these countries I've been in has an opinion says, "Oh, we've got too many problems now. I think we should go back and get run by Westminster." Nobody's suggesting that as a solution. There's lots of solutions, and all countries have their problems and their issues, but none of the potential solutions ever seems to be, "Oh, let's go back to Westminster." So that tells you, heaps as well. And so, people say it's not a rich country, Seychelles, but the problems of that country are their problems to solve in their way. It's nothing. It's not. Can you imagine Seychelles going to Westminster saying, "Oh, we need to have some money for doing this and that," and people in Westminster wouldn't have a clue what's going on the ground in Seychelles. So it's yeah.
There's a lot of I don't particularly like the term common sense, but there is something very, very commonsensical about it. When you set aside all the propaganda, all the too poor, too stupid stuff, when you set that aside, it's just common sense. And I mean, it's kind of a slogan here: independence is normal. And
I've seen that.
That is just it. It's normal. Was it at this hotel in the Seychelles where you were talking to the Zimbabweans that you mentioned?
No, that was here in Australia, actually. Australia's an amazing country. Probably a lot of people, obviously, from Scotland know quite a bit about Australia. They've probably got relatives here. It's a massive melting pot of different cultures. And I met these Zimbabweans actually during COVID, because I couldn't actually run my business during COVID because it got down to the point where I could only interact with one person, and I've got a squad of athletes, and the stadium had shut down, etc. So I managed to get a job driving what they call hire cars here. It's a posh taxi where it's by appointment only. They phone up and they pick you up. You pick them up and you take them to. So it got me out of the house and it got me earning some money. And I picked up these Zimbabweans because they got in the car. 3 of them. They got in the car. And they started, they obviously picked up my accent, and they started talking about, why don't you guys you guys should be agitating for independence. You guys should be, it's a disgrace. And I said, yeah, I know, it's absolutely agree. And they're saying, oh, we just took it from them. I mean, I think behind it all, it was to avoid black majority rule. But the point is, they knew how to deal with Westminster. Is just, you're not going to talk with them. They've said no already to Scotland through the High Court, through the Supreme Court, and through the Prime Minister. I saw that interview. He said he's not going to grant us a referendum. So it's very clear to someone who's just, I'm a simple guy. It's very clear that that's not the road you go down. You have to go down the road of A, taking it, and B, it's going to be the people, not the political parties. The people are going to have to start taking over now. The political system, like the SNP, is clearly part of the establishment and part of the problem. It's the people now that have to take over, in my opinion.
Well, I agree to a certain extent. I don't disparage, I don't dismiss political parties, because the
No.
political parties are there. They're a vital part of the machinery
Yes.
of democracy. They're what connect the people to political power, the power to make laws, the parliament. When the people don't have direct access to that kind of power. But what you seem to be talking about here is some form of UDI. So, which, as you know, is very much in line with my own thinking, that it can only be done with UDI. And these Zimbabwean gentlemen seem to agree with me.
Yes, yes. I mean, I don't know how many other countries have done this, but certainly the Zimbabweans were very clear that you're going to have to take action. I mean, they're not political experts in Scotland, and I wasn't at the time. I still aren't. But I think you're right. We have to protect our parliament that we have, and we have to protect our democracy. We have to protect it. But it's the to me, the way I'm thinking is you cannot make an omelette without breaking the eggs. So the breaking of the eggs is going to be, we have to break some British laws to break away, and we do it in a peaceful way. We try to do it in a peaceful way, and we've got to have a democratic event to back it. So you can't make an omelette without breaking the eggs. The key thing is
it sounds very much like the Scottish UDI process. And I think it doesn't matter that Scotland's situation is different from all the others. Each one is unique. Each situation is unique. But there seems to be this, it seems to be a general rule in these situations that when decolonisation happens, it happens because there is action first. The action comes first, and it has to be something has to be done. And like you say, it probably involves breaking some of the rules. You've got to break the rules to break the union. But it's the action that comes first, and our problem is that our politicians are simply refuse to take the action.
I mean, what Ireland did, and I'm not advocating violence, so that's what I'm not advocating in any way, shape, or form. But Ireland, didn't they withdraw all their Westminster MPs? Didn't they just refuse to send them?
Yeah, that again was a different situation. They had a plan. They had a place for their politicians to go. In fact, they were still using the offices at Westminster, but they had a place for them to go. They simply couldn't participate in proceedings in the chamber, but otherwise they were MPs. But they had it all. They had it organised, and they had a place for their politicians to go. People talk about withdrawing our MPs from Westminster, but there's nowhere for them to go. So again, it would have to be action first. The action to set up a place for them to go, and that has to be done by the Scottish Parliament, because it's only the Scottish Parliament that has democratic legitimacy. Does this sort of fit in with your thinking on this?
Yeah, I think so. I still, the place to bring the Scottish MPs from Westminster, would the place be the Parliament in Edinburgh?
No, because they're not elected to that Parliament. They're only elected to Westminster. This is very much like the sort of discussions that go on here, but the problem is that there are, and I don't know if this comes across from your perspective on what's happening. There are a lot of people with very entrenched positions, and there's a lot of factionalism and tribalism in the independence movement now, which is another reason for saying that we should have acted some years ago before all this set in. But do you get any sense of that tribalism?
Yes, I see lots of parties. There's Liberate Scotland. There's is it IFS. There's a lot of groups going on, going around. I mean, I saw the conference, the one in which you spoke, and so I see a lot.
That's not a party.
That's right.
It's more of a think tank. But
Yes,
there are a number of parties. Yes.
Yes. There's a number of parties, and also organisations like think tanks. There's a lot of these, and so so I've just come to get all this since basically June. So I see a lot of different units, if you like, of people wanting independence, and perhaps maybe can't they all get round a table and discuss independence? We've all got differences in different things. Can't we just get round the table, everyone representing everyone, round the table, and just say, what are we here for? We're here for independence. Why don't we work towards that? Let's put our egos in a box and close the box and leave the box outside the door, and come in and just put everything aside for Scotland for once.
There's a problem with that, Stuart, in that a lot of these positions that people take or groups take, they're kind of mutually exclusive. They're incompatible and irreconcilable. But for example, I will never agree to a Section 30 referendum like the one we had in 2014, because I have come to realise just how bad that is. But the SNP won't talk to anybody who isn't going to take their position. Everybody wants unity, but they all want it on their own terms. So this idea of unity, it just ain't going to fly.
I think the Section 30 thing, I mean, you can see that's not going to work. And what needs to happen? Does the SNP have to have a really bad election, and does the SNP have to end up being dissolved or become marginalized by the people just not voting for it? I can understand it, because when you see what Alf Baird says, they're obviously just going down this path because they're part of the establishment. You wouldn't go down that path. This is like a soccer man, like a football team coach, who says you've got to go down the right all the time because but they keep on going down the right hand side to attack the other team. The other team closes them down every time. So guess what you do next? You change and try to go down the left or down the center, or change tactics.
Yeah.
But they just seem to be. So I can't believe that people in the SNP are. I don't think people are stupid. I think they've just got into the situation now where they're scared to go for independence because they'll lose all their privileges they have of being a Westminster organisation.
My friend Gordon Henderson agrees with you in the comments. He says simply, always succinct, our Gordon, our politicians are feared. And that is true. They're intimidated by the whole British machinery. And that's another product of time. They've got so settled in that that they're comfortable with it, and breaking out of it is difficult for them.
Right.
And you can have a certain sympathy with them for that, but they put themselves in that position by sitting idle, sitting on the constitutional issue for 11 years. Are you hearing much about the upcoming Scottish general election next year?
Yes, Yes, again through the sources that like yourselves and others, not the
Right, but
mainstream media.
mainstream media not yet taking any interest. It is 6 months away.
No. Yep. I wrote an email to the ABC's head of news in London, just asking them, just making sure they're aware of Salvo liberation going to the UN. I got no reply. But okay, I don't know. They'll be busy with other things. They've got the war in Ukraine, because they use the London office as a European office. That's how it's structured. So there's a lot of things going on with few staff. So it's possibly just not a priority, sadly. But I've put the email through. So now someone's read it, and sure they'll be it's in their heads now.
Right. Talking about getting no reply, this leads us nicely on, almost like we'd rehearsed it, to your dealings with the UK High Commission in Canberra, I believe.
Yes.
First of all, it just strikes me as really odd that there is still a UK High Commission. That just seems it doesn't seem to jibe somehow. But you had some attempted dealings with the UK High Commission, yes. I believe.
Well, so having done a lot of looking at research on what was going on with Salvo, etc., I joined Salvo in Liberation Scotland, so I remember. But what I decided to do was just write a polite email to the High Commissioner, the lady. I know the lady's name. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say. But I sent her an email, and just at that point, it was that was back in July, and I just asked her what her opinion was on the submission that Liberation made to the UN in March. Just wanted their opinion, and I got no reply. And then I sent another one. I've got my notes here. I sent another email on August 11th. I think I was patient, and then another one again on August the 29th. And so no response. So then I thought, well, I'll give them a call. So I called the number, and there's a voice message set up, and if you want to go to this department, press 1, do this department, press 2, etc., all the way to 9. And I pressed, I think it was 3 was my one, and it just said the mailbox was full. So I thought, okay. So I just hung up, had to go and do some work, came back about an hour and a half later, tried again, and still the mailbox was full. Now, this is during office hours. So, there would surely be staff in. So I've discovered, long story short, I've discovered that in the Sydney office as well, my number has been blocked. So they've blocked my number. I cannot make an appointment, because I then decided to go down to Sydney in person to the British Council, the General Consulate in Sydney, and speak with them. But you can't get in without an appointment, and of course you have to phone. I guess you could probably go out. You could, but I guess my name now they wouldn't accept. They wouldn't take an appointment. I mean,
you're a marked man. You're down as a troublemaker.
I'm down as a troublemaker.
That's nothing to be ashamed of, by the way.
Sorry?
You can get T-shirts with that on. Troublemaking bastard.
Well, I decided I was kind of thinking I probably wouldn't succeed to just go down on spec. So I took some flyers down with me. And after I couldn't get in, because I was talking to the concierge, and they were the usual friendly Australians, and they said, no, you can't get up. You have to, it's on the 16th floor. You can't get up there. You have to have an appointment, etc. So I said, right, that's fine. That's okay. I said, I'm just going to go outside and just hand some flyers out, if just to let you know. And the guy said, yep, no problem. Yep. So I stood outside one morning in Sydney and handed out flyers. I just stood there with these flyers in my hand, and the title was "Scotland as a Colony." And so there were many people who would probably, they initially saw somebody who was handing out flyers and just said, no, I'm not going to bother. And they kind of But then when their eye caught the title, you could see them doing a double take. And then they came over and they said, okay, what's this about? And, they would walk off. Because these people are going out and in for work. They're basically coming in and out for work. Or they're maybe nipping out for a coffee, so they're on a quick coffee. So they haven't got time necessarily to chat. But they saw the title and, wouldn't have taken a flyer otherwise. So I thought that was an interesting reaction. One American lady stood and chatted a bit more and thought that what I was doing was really cool. So, so it was. I just wanted to get the word out to the regular Australian, I guess, just to get the word out there, because there's nothing from the press. So I just want to get the word out there and information they can follow up if they want.
There's a lesson. There's a lesson there. I think that a lot of people object to this portrayal of Scotland as a colony. This is on the nationalist side as well as the unionist side. The unionists object to it for obvious reasons.
Yes.
But even on the nationalist side, on the pro-independence side, there's a certain group of people who object to Scotland being portrayed as a colony. But I'm taking it from what you're telling me here, that the people that you encountered anyway, they didn't see that as a ridiculous claim. They didn't immediately dismiss it. Is that right?
No. I've had no hassle about this, and I've had no hassle from anyone who said, "How dare you break up the UK?" I never heard that sentiment. I mean, I'm sure it exists, but I've had no problem. I had a second leaflet drop in a different part of Sydney last week, and it was in a multicultural part of Sydney. I was initially in the CBD, in the centre of Sydney, near the Opera House, etc. But then this one was out in the west of Sydney, multicultural area, and people were coming up and looking at it and going, "Oh, great!" You see, and they would stand there and look and go, "Oh yeah, that's cool." They're standing there reading it, going, "Okay, this is good," and they're going, "Good luck, all the best." And one lad came up and he said, "My parents are Scottish. My name is Lindores, and Lindores is a small town in Fife." I didn't know that. Sorry, people in Lindores.
I'm a Fifer myself, Stuart. So,
and he said, and he stood there talking. He said, "I'm so proud to be having the Scottish heritage. I'm named after the village I'm from. His name was Lindores." And I thought, oh, God, there you go. I said, "Have you been there?" "No, not yet, but I want to go." He was only a young lad. He was only, I don't know, 20, 21. He was probably a university student or something like that. But it was amazing how no one's made a negative comment as to say, how ridiculous. Why would you break up the UK? Or isn't the UK a united country? No one's had a problem yet. Fingers crossed, touch wood,
Well, that's that really is interesting. Getting this viewpoint from somebody who knows Scotland, presumably considers Scotland home, but you've been away from it, you've been detached from it for so long,
yes.
and you're looking at it almost like a foreigner, almost like somebody from overseas. Yes. So it's been really, really fascinating to get that perspective. Do you intend to continue campaigning, and are you in touch with anybody here in Scotland about how you conduct that campaign, what things that you can do?
Yes, I've been emailing Salvo, and now I'm in there. They've recently set up last week. They've set up a diaspora group, so it's an official group, and so I think I don't know, of course, but I think they're wanting to network with other expats for the world. I mean, we put our name on the on the platform, and we put our flag opposite it. So my flag is the Australian flag, and there's Japanese flags, and there's flags from all over, Canadian flags, and there's flags from all over the country, all over the world. So they're trying to, pull in the diaspora, which is a thing which I do know that the Irish used as well. They were successful with, they used the diaspora. So yes, it's an untapped source, but I'm happy just to do a peaceful thing. Just let people know what's going on. I'm not doing anything, rude or nasty. Just hand people a flyer. Just say, here's what's going on, just in case, you're interested.
That's probably enough, Stuart. Simply
Yes.
making people aware. If only 1 in 10 the idea sticks with them, it's still progress. And if the diaspora is huge, if everybody did that, if there were more people doing what you're doing, even if what they're doing isn't very much, it all adds up. It adds up to something huge. Right, so. Stuart, we're out of time. We're actually a wee bit over time, but I don't bother too much about that. But I don't like to test people's patience by making these shows too long. Thank you very much for coming on and having this conversation. I could continue it for hours. I dare say we could get into some really interesting discussions. Thanks very much for doing this, Stuart, and I wish you well, and I hope you keep in touch.
You're welcome, and yes, no problem. Just contact me anytime.
Okay, Stuart. Bye for now. That's been great, and it's totally filled the show. I did have a tailpiece. I had a small item at the end, but quite frankly, I'm a bit upbeat after talking to Stuart, and I don't see any point in spoiling my mood by going on to that final item. So all it leaves for me is to say that's it, and I'll be back on Sunday, of course, with Stephen Duncan. And I again forgotten what it is that he's going to be talking about, but I know it's something interesting. It's something that caught my interest right away. I just can't remember what it is. One of these days I'll learn to take a note. Until Sunday. Oh, and it's St. Andrew's Day, so we'll maybe have something special for St. Andrew's Day. Until Sunday. Bye for now.